is to set up, not that I want to add another layer of bureaucracy, but to set up another board, if you will, that sole focus is in restoring and repurposing that building. Possibly a member to the city commission, a member from the Community and Economic Development Board, a member from the Historical Commission, and certainly a member from the Friends of City Hall. None of this is meant to take away from what the Friends of City Hall have done in stepping in when, quite frankly, the city has dropped the ball on that building. I mean, me included. I haven't done anything for 3 years with that structure, and shame on me. So I think if the city can put a board together that sole focus is seeking grant money, looking at what demand there would be for renting spaces out, et cetera, and how to revamp the building so it can be used but still maintain the historical integrity of the structure, I'm all for it. If the city's unwilling to do that, then I think that Plan B would be to exercise the deal with the Friends of City Hall to sell them the building only and retain the grounds as a park. So that's my 2 cents.
That's you too. Okay.
Well worth it. I want to say, first of all, that I agree that what we have discussed here and what I'm going to recommend certainly is in no way an indictment or a lack of appreciation for what Friends of City Hall have done, and I hope will continue to do for 300 Broadway. And I hope you hear that. I believe, however, that the city should maintain ownership of 300 Broadway. I think a separate fund should be established within the general fund to manage or maintain and restore the building, to be augmented by, but certainly not diminished by, any revenues that the building may generate moving forward. I agree, too, that we should establish a separate work group comprised of stakeholders, Friends of City Hall, the Historical Commission, Chamber of Commerce, under the leadership of the city manager. The purpose of the group will be in part to ensure that the property, or ensure the proper, you see why I wrote this down? To ensure the proper and long-term maintenance of the building and grounds, to see to and ensure the preservation, restoration, and maintenance of the historical structure and appearance of the building and grounds, to promote the use of the building as a community and regional resource. And I think regional resource has its place today in our negotiations for funding and grants. To manage the building and the community usage of the building, much like we do with the park by the beach. To seek out and apply for such grants, gifts, and monies that become available to support any and all of the above responsibilities, and to determine what spaces and uses the building will offer as a community and regional center, keeping in mind the other resources already available within the city. I think trying to determine at this point what kind of a community center we're going to turn this building into is a little bit putting the cart before the horse. Certainly we have resources in the city that are being used to function in part as a community center. Washington Life Center is the main example. So, you know, to start now reinventing the horse, I think it's putting the cart before the horse. As I said before, keeping 300 Broadway within the city is not an indictment nor a lack of appreciation for Friends of City Hall or the work or the work they've done. I think moving forward, however, better results can be attained in the long term from a broader coalition in which Friends of City Hall must be a significant part and play a significant role. This approach has produced noteworthy results in the recent past. And we need to keep in mind that the times they are changing, and being able to switch gears and seek out the directions, the flow of the energy within the community, the larger community, the county and the state, to seek funding and whatnot. We need to be able to do that, and we need people with the experience in doing that to move it forward. The roles I foresee for members of the work group, I think the city needs to provide oversight and management of the entire project. Somebody has to be in charge, especially as far as maintenance and security of the building and the grounds. Now, they didn't do such a good job of that in the past, but that's in the past. I think we need to put them to the test. We need to have a support structure behind them to see that they do that, and having a separate maintenance fund sufficient to the task, not like the $5,000 that we had in the past, sufficient to the task is maintained for that purpose.
And utilized.
And utilized, absolutely. And I see that as part of the city manager's responsibilities moving forward. It's a city asset. The city is responsible for maintaining it, and they're the boss. So, good luck with that.
Thanks.
I think Friends of City Hall and the Historical Commission are meant to be responsible for the preservation and restoration of the historical structure. They have the experience, they have the expertise, and they certainly have the passion to do that. Also, they can assist in continued fundraising. They have some experience in that as well. Between the Community and Economic Development Board, Laura Merchant, and the Chamber of Commerce, we need to move forward looking for funding and grants, and put the feelers out to individuals or groups who might be interested in renting or leasing parts of that building for whatever they need it for. As someone who has worked in a little one-desk office within a company that's supplied a bunch of those, I think that's something that really is worth exploring, and we've seen that, how well that's working at Eddie so far. And certainly Eddie is only, half utilized at this point? And they're looking to add. They're looking to add. There is a demand for that kind of activity. This is going to be a work in process, and roles and responsibilities are going to change. They're going to overlap. They should intertwine. And the important part moving forward is that all of the parties involved are committed to setting their agendas and their egos aside and working with each other to restore and maintain this important asset in our city. I feel like I've just given a Gettysburg Address here. Most of what I've said here has been echoed by you guys. And, is there anything you want to add, any additional discussion, add to what you said prior? Ben, you just inhaled.
I just inhaled. I think
I'd refine my statement saying that keeping 300 Broadway would be under the contingent that we are selling Water Street.
Okay. You could give me a reason.
Well, immediate capital,
Okay.
you know, and we need that to start. We don't have it. There's your jump start. We can't keep both.
Anybody else?
I think that's a good thought. The cost, to get it open, these dreams are dreams until we put numbers to how much it's gonna cost to get it to the point where we can utilize
Up and
it.
running,
Yeah.
okay. Now, keep in mind, a good section of that building is already up and running.
Yeah,
So, and Laura has generously, I think, agreed to open it up for that purpose and use the funds if we generate it to go further. So we do have an initial starting point.
I think it'll be important to see some progress, because they're just costing money and sitting there right now.
Light the fire.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't say that my decision is exclusively predicated on 303 getting sold, but I do agree that it would infuse needed capital
Right.
into the project at
Right,
300 Broadway.
okay. Well, we may have time to get to that further today.
Sure. I do think that, we would want to get as many grants as possible and these placemaking grants, which are apparently very hot and the thing right now. And anything we could get through the county or state that for such purposes would be, of utmost importance. But again, I wouldn't say that my decision is predicated on being able to sell 303 specifically. I don't have anything for or against it. I mean, it makes the most sense to me as well, but, it's not, again, my decision would still stand, I guess, either way, as long as we could, reach out and get enough funding from other sources. But I do agree with a lot of what you said and what Jake said about forming a committee or some functioning management body that would be able to do this. And I guess I would ask Holly if, A, you'd be willing to do such a thing, if that's asked of you, and B, if there was any similar experience you may have had in Lexington where a building such as this was city-owned and operated in a similar way, or at least upkept and things like this by the city. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just trying to, understand your side of it, because I don't feel it's fair for us to tell you something that you have to do.
I
Or
think
is it-
that it would be a good idea to put a board in place with all of the different entities that have stake in it. I did not manage a massive property like that, specifically a historic property, but I think in the grand scheme of it, if it's a city asset, it's a city asset. The way you have Parks and Rec oversee your parks, the way you have, a pension board oversee the pension. So I think it's the same concept, so I don't think that it's out of any of our wheelhouses to be able to handle, but I do think that a board in place that has the know-how, Friends of City Hall at the table who understand the historic value of things. Somebody from CED that's a little bit more tied into the business community. Bring the experts to the table and have them all working on the same project.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I just echo Commissioner Ross that for my part, I think that, my comments regarding the old City Hall stand regardless of what we do with 303 Water Street, even though I have to agree with everyone else also that it would obviously provide a good jump start if we were to sell that building and use at least some of the funds to kind of give it a kick in the butt, so to speak. But either way, I still think that the city should retain 300 Broadway.
And ensuring that the Guy family wishes are met based on their
course.
will and testament, obviously, yes.
Yeah. I just don't think the way that those buildings currently exist and that we own them both, that we can continue to own them both. So, I mean, the consolidation of assets, shrinking the black or shrinking the red part of the budget so that we can maintain one properly.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Let's see how to word it.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to City Commission that the city retain ownership of 300 Broadway, and further that they put in place a board comprised of, at the minimum, the City Commission, the Community and Economic Development Board, the Historical Commission, and the Friends of City Hall to oversee the rehabilitation, restoration, and use of the structure.
Second.
Anybody want to add to that or delete anything from it? Keep in mind that this, and folks out there, this is not a decision as to what to do with this building. This is merely a recommendation to the city commission, and they're gonna have to work out the final decision on this, so. Okay, any further discussion on that? We call the question. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good deal. We have a recommendation, and we've got time to go to 303 Broadway. So let's reopen the public comment. Again, since we've heard numerous arguments before, let's reopen the comment section for 5 minutes. People that would like to add something new or different to, yeah, sure.
I didn't know whether
Can-
we were allowed to.
Can you go up to the microphone? We should have had it in the middle, I'm sorry. What's her name again?
I don't know that
What's her
I'm
name again?
telling you
Heather
anything new,
Heather,
but,
Heather.
I was told about the tour to Eddy Elementary, and it was really interesting, and it was inspiring, and it was amazing, their rapid success. They had a few things that I think really helped them in that they have a commercial kitchen, and they have lots of bathrooms. City Hall is not as big, and it is a different structure. But I do think repurposing it could really work well. I feel strongly about the upper level being maintained as close to its original as the Opera House. And maybe, I don't know whether you would continue to just lease that part of it to nonprofits, especially Friends of City Hall. The Historical Society, we do have some funds that are in restricted funds just for the upper level. And there is a possibility that we could use it for some matching funds. I think it would need more than what we have, but it would help. And then you could put an elevator, and I believe you need another stairway going to the outside. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work from the upper level. I'm not such a purist. I also looked into a lot of the standards for historical buildings. That elevator and stairway could be placed on the north side of the building. There are rules and regulations of how to do that. And I actually brought a bunch of stuff. I was going to give it to Brian after the meeting. And it gives you ideas of how it's been done. And they've done it with many, many historical buildings in order to be able to use them in today's society. And I think that's important. The upper level could be a community center, as we've all said, and you could have classes and all kinds of things going on in the daytime. People pay fees to take classes. Everything would have to bring money in order for the city to be able to afford to do this. In the evening, you could have, evening performances, but you could also rent it for parties and weddings, and I mean, you could go on and on with a long list. I would like to see Friends be very prominent in continuing to help, and I think all other nonprofits, such as the Historical Society, we would definitely continue to raise money. We've been sort of left out of this for some time now, but we have kept our restricted funds untouched, and from now on forward, we would raise money to continue to help. I think that it does require everybody to be more flexible and to work together. One thing I saw at Eddy Elementary was Jeff Boehm really had taken on some of the management of the leasing out and the rentals. And certainly you could do that in City Hall. You have smaller areas down there, but I think it would still work. And then my big issue was how to trust the city to start taking care of its own properties with the past history. I have been assured that a subcommittee, I don't know exactly how to refer to it, but would have eyes of the Community and Economic Development Board, making sure where the money was going, that this money, as Holly said, it won't be a cash cow for the city. The purpose of raising the money would be to continue to restore the building and to maintain it from then on. And anyway, I lose track of my thoughts very easily at my age, but that's pretty much all I wanted to say. But if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks. If you supply that to me, I can scan it and provide it to the entire commission, the
Oh, this?
documents you talked about.
Sure, just on my way to give it to you, I'll give you some examples. And I bent down the pages of two. This is an addition. And usually they like you to do it on a side at the back of a building or the side of a building. Here's another one. And this is, on the front is a sheet. This was from Franklin Village. However, this is from the, if you see here, the
Secretary of the Interior.
and these are the rules that you sort of, this is it, and then how you sort of get around the problems of dealing with a historic building.
Sure.
Okay.
And is this ours to keep, or?
Yours to
Okay.
keep.
Thank you very
I
much.
would have printed more, but I thought I'd run out
No,
of
no.
ink.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. What you got, Phil?
Hi, Phil Luckshak. I just want to say, I want to thank the Friends of City Hall for the immense, enormous work they've done in that building so far. And I'm glad if the city does decide to keep the building, that they will be included, and I hope we lean on them and utilize them. They've done a tremendous work, and I thank Judy White for that. Thank you for all the work you guys have done. On that board, you guys are the recommendation for this board to be created. I'm making a recommendation to improve that board. That is ultimately going to be designed for community building, going to be a community building. I would recommend one or two slots, however it plays out, that maybe just standard residents could apply for a vacancy, be on that board. So you get the entities of the city and also just a general everyday resident that's not part of a board to be part of that process as well. Not sure how you'd have to do that with restorative motion if you want to do that idea now, or recommend the commission, something along those lines though. On 303 Water Street, if the city does decide to sell it, which I'm still against, but if they do decide to sell it, I would ask that you review once more with City Attorney Bob Davis to really make sure that it's taken into consideration with the controlling resolution and the will from the Guy family, and that the city does get, and the residents do receive the appropriate amount of funding back into some form of the community that's required of the city to do so. And then, of course, I know people said they're heavily protected, but make sure the park to the north and to the south is protected. Thank you.
Phil, on your point of citizen involvement, the Community and Economic Development Board does have 2 citizens at large on that board. So I don't know whether that fulfills your requirement or not, but we already have something like that in place.
And furthermore, Commissioner Bryson's motion was at a minimum that those people be included on the board, so there's room for expansion.
At the end of the day, the commission will have to decide
Right.
what and who and what they want on it.
Yes. Just saying that even as part of the recommendation to commission, that caveat should be in there, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, guys. What are we going to do with 303 Broadway?
303 Southwest.
Water.
South Water.
Water.
The other building.
Too many threes.
The other building,
Earth,
yeah.
Broadway just got nervous.
So I,
And we'll go down to you again.
about down to me again. So I think we kind of talked about last time, and I kind of brought up, we're talking about 2 community centers now, and I just don't think that's necessary for a town of, 3,800, 4,000 people. We can't maintain either building in current state. By shrinking our footprint, we have more assets to apply to 300 Broadway. And because of that, I feel like we should sell it. I also think that the estimates that we're running all of our numbers on are very low for a waterfront piece of property in a business district.
Estimates to sell it or
Yeah,
maintain it?
I think, or to sell it. Sell
Okay.
it, sorry.
Water view.
Okay, water view, right.
Would not
Where that
include-
building is on the river downtown, regardless of if there's a park in between it and the actual frontage, that building's worth a lot more than I think the $400,000 we've been running numbers on, in my perspective. And I think that money would give us the jump start and the enthusiasm for Broadway. So I feel like that building needs to be sold. The thought of tearing that building down would cost us, what, $60,000 to $100,000 to destroy an asset worth, $400 to, in my mind, more like $700,000. So we're spending money to destroy something we have that could be used to improve other things that we own. As long as those funds are protected, the Guy family donated a building that we tried to maintain, and we can't now. I don't know them personally, but I think that they'd be extraordinarily pleased to know that their contribution to the city allowed us to get Broadway back on its feet.
Actually, the houses they sold were directly behind Old City Hall.
No kidding.
No kidding. That's correct. I didn't mean to interrupt, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. It's good. That's my
Yeah,
thought.
That's it, okay. John?
Yeah, I think selling is a better plan than demolishing, and or keeping, because I think, you know, the city, you know, quite frankly, we're not the city that we once were, financially, and the residents are not, you know, flush with the kind of money that, you know, in comparable terms, was there when all of, you know, the grand spaces that we have were built. You know, the city hall, for one, with the opera house was, you know, wasn't every city. It was cities with successful industry, and that's what it came from. And I think, you know, at this point in our history, we have to be mindful that, you know, we can't just put it on the residents to keep paying higher and higher taxes than everybody around them. And why would anybody come here, you know, to buy property and to, you know, and to live in our city if we continue to do that? And so I think that's, you know, and that's the way that kind of thing happens, is if we just keep these properties and add community center and this and that, you know, when we're already a little bit strapped for the kind of money that we need for that kind of thing. And this will give us hopefully, a new owner that will invest in that property and make it something that we can enjoy, you know, however it is. It's still going to, it's not gonna only be something that's, you know, gonna be restored by the new owner, but it'll also have the ability to, you know, they're gonna be paying taxes in the city. It's gonna be part of the bottom line for our city.
How do you feel about new owners tearing it down and building something
Yeah.
entirely different, like a pagoda?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, you know. Obviously, we could put some restrictions on it, I'm sure, you know, as the historical nature of the building, but I don't know that that's gonna help sell it. Obviously, we don't wanna sell the waterfront, that's the park. But, and, I mean, I know it's great to think about how much money we could make for it, but I don't imagine I'd be able to afford a sandwich from a sandwich shop that's $700,000 just to buy the building they gotta put $1 million into. So, you know, I don't know that I wanna guess on the value of it, but whatever that is, I think, you know, we're protecting the investment that was made as the Guy Center.
Right.
And whatever that is in today's dollars, and that transaction becomes, somehow, continues that legacy in the community. Those are my thoughts.
Brian?
I'm not against selling it at all. The first thing, though, that I would want to undertake, if that were to be a choice, is to ensure that both legally and community-wise, we educate everyone on the parcel that is to go with it. Because that, of all the sticking points that I've heard, is one of the biggest. You know, you can't get rid of that, that's a park. But few seem to understand, you know, the restrictions that Mike had specifically placed on the recommendation, or not recommendation, but what was sent out to the realtors for doing the property assessment.
CRP,
Right, thank you. That thing.
yeah.
That I think is exceedingly important. Again, understanding the contributions, Phil, that you mentioned, that the city owes in terms of honoring the Guy will, and the resolution that was made at one of our commission meetings to, you know, make this Guy Community Center, et cetera. Beyond that, though, having toured the building, it's built like a tank, so anybody interested in tearing it down would be a little crazy, both from a cost to demolish perspective and that they've got a solid building to begin with. I have attempted and started but not finished items on the planning commission that would at least register historic buildings along the overlay district of the nautical mile to explain to any prospective buyer or owner that we would really like it, the city would prefer that this not be raised, meaning torn down. So while it is no guarantee, it is at least a bit of a protection from it being torn down. And Judy and others have mentioned what a beautiful building it is and what a historical presence it has in this town and is, a part of why people come to visit our beautiful downtown. That said, having toured it also, I think it could make a good restaurant. It could be something that, it's a little awkward as a community center, just having to go up and then having really no good way to get downstairs other than via the small stairwell in the back. So it is a little bit of an awkward building in that regard, and whoever buys it would need to deal with that, quite frankly. But again, people are creative and there's ways to get around that, especially when if it were a restaurant and they at least made the first story ADA compliant, I don't believe that they'd need to make the downstairs ADA compliant, because if that's only kitchen or staff area, then I don't believe you have to have some sort of special ingress or egress. I'm not entirely sure, but if we were to make it a community center and that area were to be accessible, or keep it as a city building, all the funds that Mike Kittredge had outlined and gotten quotes for, or at least spoken with contractors on, would need to come to fruition, and that's a very big bill. So again, I do agree that it would cost more to upgrade it and keep it than I think we could ever make on the building from a community center standpoint. It would cost more to raise it or tear it down, and it would then, again, lose the financial legacy that the guys hoped to maintain for it, and the city would be on the hook to push that, or, continue that financial legacy through. So again, it's just more and more money being taken from the city. So again, I do agree, the best thing to me seems to be to sell it, but again, I would want that outline of what exactly we're talking about, the parcel, et cetera, just to clarify that for any residents in the city who may have taken issue with thinking that the parks are gonna go away and everything else, because I think that's very important, and I agree that the parks should not go away. You can't buy that lighthouse, that's the city's, you can't buy the anchor, that's the city's, so. Oh. Paul's taking it.
Is that Paul back there?
Yeah.
Jake?
Yeah, done? Brian,
I'm
done?
done. Yes, thank you.
Jake?
I also think that we need to divest ourselves of that property. I think it's time for the city to stop the bleeding, per se. It's going to cost far too much for us to bring it up to code, and it's going to cost the city, as far as ADA compliance, and it's going to cost the city, as everyone's also already pointed out, a lot of money if you wanted to raise the building, per se. I think the prudent thing to do would be to sell the building. Now you, in addition to the monies you recoup from selling it, you also have this sliver of the city budget that you've been using to maintain the building that could be shifted to other purposes, possibly 300 Broadway, to help with the maintenance of that structure. I think it's important we get that thing back on the tax rolls and get it out into the community to basically breathe life into the structure again. As far as the community center, the Guy will, the living legacy, if you will, I think that is a separate issue that the commission needs to take up as a whole to figure out what that should be. And once you figure out what that should be, then the funds that you recoup from selling 303 South Water can be put towards that, whatever it may be, or at least whatever the breakout is. Obviously, the accountants and lawyers will have something to say about that, but. So I don't feel that it's for this board to figure out what that community center should be, but I personally don't see it in that structure.
Anything else?
No, I think everything else has pretty much been said.
And that is my point. Everything has pretty much been said, as far as I'm concerned. It's an asset of the city that is draining resources right now. It is not usable in its current state. The amount of money the city would have to spend to reach that usable state just isn't a smart thing to do. Neither is tearing it down for the reasons we've already discussed, so I'm in favor of selling it as well. I think Mike said there was a 15-foot easement around that building. Does anybody remember that?
Only to the east.
Only,
The north and south sides are the footprint of the building. We would have an agreement that there would be, if forever we had to walk on, the property line or something, that we could do so. But the north and south side would be the building. The east side towards the water is where your easement would be.
okay, so
It
will
was
not
15 or 20 feet.
infringe on the trees in the park and
Nope.
things like that? Okay.
Correct.
So, but again, that's something I think that needs to be worked out as part of the final agreement. But I think we're all in agreement that our recommendation would be to sell the building. Do we have any idea or recommendation? I'm sure you looked through all of the RFQs, Ps, all of them things. Does it matter at this point if we, to discuss which commercial real estate group we should be going with, or is that something for the commission?
That one I'd almost leave to the commission.
Yeah.
Let them
I wouldn't.
Figure that out.
Okay, that works for me. So, that's one less thing we have to do. All right, let's call the question. We have a motion?
No, we do not. So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city commission that we sell 303 South Water and place whatever funds we recoup from the sale into a restricted fund until such time as the city commission can determine what the Guy Community Center should be.
I will second it with the addendum that, in addition, we understand the Guy will and commission resolution, the legal
Implications?
obligation of the
Obligation.
city to honor that.
I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion?
What
Ben-
about adding
Ben
some
Hale?
sort of protections around what can be done with
A
the
curated.
building? And can we do that? I don't know.
That runs into problems, because
Yeah.
once they own the property,
No.
they can do what they want. Now, the planning commission has been working on, and Brian can attest to that, on some kind of guidance as to what, particularly in the nautical mile district, we will permit or not permit or will smile upon.
Right.
But that does not have the force of law behind it.
Okay.
It's merely,
Okay.
and I think we've had several examples of how that's worked for us and against us in the city so far, so.
Unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with whatever zoning ordinances
Right, we have.
we have, and,
Yeah.
well, at the time of the sale, I mean, the sale takes 6 months to go through.
And it takes 2 years to
And-
change it.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's zoned commercial, right? We can't,
It is zone commercial,
okay.
correct.
So nobody's gonna rip it down and build a giant house for private use.
No, but they could put a McDonald's there. I mean,
Yeah. There's no parking. Wouldn't make any sense.
yeah.
But it's not going to auction, it's,
Right.
you could still be choosy with
Yeah.
Realtor.
Yep,
And
yep.
and the city can still say, no, I don't want to sell it to you.
Right.
Even if you have an offer, so.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we should sell it with consideration for the buyer's ultimate plan.
I was going to suggest, can we do that? Can we ask a potential buyer to present us with plans?
I think through conversations, you can determine what maybe their goal is a little bit. And if you had multiple offers and one was, you saw them leaning towards some, franchisee thing
Right.
versus somebody who was a hometown person who wanted to keep the building, absolutely, you could be choosy on who you sold it to.
So,
And I mean, I think you can do that, but it's also not gonna be legally binding.
Right.
Right.
So,
Because, like you
Bait and
said, once
switch.
they own it, what they do, they have to
Yeah.
just abide by our zoning
Yeah.
ordinances. But, I mean, small towns have a tendency to sometimes know people that want to buy things. And if, you know they have a heart for historic buildings or for the community, then you may have an idea of who may have your same ultimate goal in mind.
Other thoughts, discussion? All right, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, let's talk about next meetings. Do we need one?
I don't think we do.
I think we're done. That's our job.
Think we're done? Think we're done?
I think your job is done.
Okay.
Well done.
Do we need a motion to say our job is done?
I'd just like to thank the community and those who, listened to us, answered all of our questions, and, helped us along in this process. Thank you all for coming out and supporting us, so we really appreciate it.
I echo that
I think I
as
speak
well.
on behalf of the board when I say that, so.
absolutely.
Or this
Yep.
work group, I should say.
And this is the way a community works, or should work, is that we all come together and share our thoughts and our feelings and our ideas, and understand that nobody gets everything that they want. And that when we work together and collaborate and share and give a little, take a little, some wonderful things can happen. So for being part of that, thank you all very, very much. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Folks, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.